wanted to take a minute and answer the question of who am I? And the reason I'm doing this is because I think if you are thinking about getting the training with me, you need to know who I am and where I come from and see whether that's something that aligns with you. So you can see from my background, I currently live in Panama City, Panama. And this is a big divergence from where I came from. I started out as a kid on a farm and in a small town in Pennsylvania, and I grew up milking cows and throwing hay bales and cleaning up cow poop and all of those things that farm kids do. And then after college, where I studied communications and government, I moved to Washington, D.C., and then from there moved to West Virginia, where I opened my practice. But while I was in Washington, I had started a business working in the music industry. And what we did was we helped to develop unsigned artists. That's what we did. In fact, I'm proud to say we had the first hosted radio program on XM radio in the world at the time. Now it's called XM Sirius, I think, Sirius, something like that. And so we helped people to become famous, but it was very stressful work. And I came from a background with a mom who had a lot of problems with depression and anxiety. I didn't have that stuff as a kid. I always felt safe, but as an adult, when I got into the big, bad, competitive world, and it got hard and it got scary and I was on my own, I began to develop anxiety really bad. And it got to a place where it was debilitating. I was, the thing that stands out to me was when the phone would ring and it would be something really stressful, I would find myself crawling under my desk in fetal position, just sort of shaking until I could get my strength to come out. At the time, I had a number of people working with me. And so I can only imagine what was going through their head when the person who they're supposed to be leaning on is hiding under the desk again, basically with her thumb in her mouth, trying to get through the day. And so that took me on a path of alternative healthcare. I didn't have enough money at the time to get healthcare, so I couldn't go down the pill path, thank God. So I had to try everything alternative that I could. I started out with essential oils. That was the first thing I learned. And my mom and I started a business called Long Hollow Farm, where we would sell essential oils and teach people about aromatherapy. And then that was sort of short-lived because at the time it was time for me to move to West Virginia. I had met someone and it was on to the next phase of my life. And so it was while I was in West Virginia, I had taken a few alternative healthcare trainings that were helpful but didn't really solve it. And then one day we were doing a health fair where we were giving away free sessions for the people in our small town to teach them about alternative healthcare, when this man named Ken came up and he was doing EFT. I had never heard of it. And he demonstrated it for me. And now this is 20 plus years ago. And no one had ever heard of EFT, and it seemed ridiculous. This man was tapping on my face, and I was supposed to get better, and I thought, this is just ludicrous. But the reality was that I felt a change. So I started playing with the little bit that I knew, and then I went on and I got Gary Craig's trainings, and I studied it and studied it and studied it, because there's a lot of it, like 150 hours of training. And I opened a practice. And the lady in town actually gave me a free office in one of the ladies in town gave me a free office at her building because there was nobody in it. And so I was able to start giving free sessions. And I did that as a sort of internship for a while. And one of the ladies in my community, a psychologist, actually sent out an email. I didn't know very many people at the time. I was new in town, and she sent out an email to her list. And it was a small list, a couple hundred names. But from that day forward, my practice was full. I was seeing, I had 8 hours of work to do every day. And over time, those people transitioned from being free clients into being paid clients. And I ended up growing into having my own center. It was called the Self-Health and Awareness Center there in West Virginia. And it became a full-time job for me. I would teach classes and I would see clients, and I was able to take care of myself. Then a while later, I decided to start an online university where we were teaching people about these many principles. It was called the International Metaphysical University. And that taught me how to take classes online. I had to learn, by fire. And so I put the EFT class up online as a part of that training, as a part of that process. And once I saw the power of having online classes instead of teaching EFT live, I was, going around to different centers and teaching, and I would have, 5, 10, 20 students in a classroom, but it was so limiting. And the other thing that was a problem with it was that I couldn't teach them what they really needed to know in a few days, 3, 4 days max, oftentimes a weekend. And so I always felt like I had left people wanting. And even now, when I see people taking live training, I kind of feel bad for them because I know they can't possibly absorb all that content in a few days. And I know that even though the instructor may be well intending and really want people to learn, that the system itself, the weekend workshop itself is never enough. You need time as a student, as a human, to learn. So if you walk out of a weekend workshop, which was what was happening often, is that people would be excited and, wow, this is great. And then they would forget, if they could have even absorbed it all in the first place, they forget a lot of it quickly. And then by the time they go out to practice, they have no support, and they could call me, but it's not the same as having oversight while you go through a training and having the time to absorb it and the time to really practice and develop your craft. And so then I eventually closed my center and focused entirely on the online work, because to me, it's just a superior way to teach. And it also freed me up. So I didn't have to live in this small town anymore. When I was a teenager, I always wanted to travel. And when I was a teenager, I saw this ad on television with the professor from Gilligan's Island, for any of you who are in my age group and remember that. And he was doing a television commercial for something called YFU, Youth for Understanding. And it was a student exchange program. So we had a woman come to live from us. I called the number, and we had a woman come to live with us, well, a girl, come to live with us for a year, who I now consider to be my sister. And then I went to Japan as an exchange student. And to be honest, up until that point in my life, I never felt like I belonged. And when I got involved with the international students, the international community, I really found my home. So the point of that is, whenever I left West Virginia, I didn't know where I was going. I just started moving. And one of the students from the class actually gave me her flight benefits for a year, which was like the greatest gift anyone's ever given me. And so I was able to begin traveling the world. And the cool thing was that because the training was online, I could do that. And so I traveled the world for some time. And when I was ready to settle down again, I found myself living in Panama City, Panama, which is where I live now. You can see the view from my window in the background. And so I work exclusively online with people now. And the reason that's valuable information is because you too can do it. If you're somebody who wants the freedom of working from home, you want the freedom of being able to travel, you don't want to pay for an office, you don't want to be in one place all the time, you can still do that as an EFT practitioner, because most of my practitioners have their practices online now. You don't have to pay for an office. You don't have to find your clientele in just your own small town. Now you can find your clientele all over the world, just as my students come from all over the world. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about me, because when you're making a decision about who you want to train with, the instructor is an important piece of that puzzle, an important piece of knowing who you relate to, who you align with, who you want to learn from, who you trust. And so I just thought you should know about me before you make that decision. And if you decide that I'm someone that you can relate to and you like, then I'd love to have you in the class. I'd love to train you, because for me, the great joy of my life is not doing sessions anymore. It's not what I do now. I did it for 12 years, sitting down in front of people day in and day out. Now I work with students. That's my role now. That's what I do. And so your relationship with me is a critical piece of this puzzle. And I want you to know who I am before you make that decision. So if you have any other questions, you can always reach out to me. You can look at the website at onlineeftcertification.com to see the content of the training and to see whether it feels like the right thing for you. But anyway, that's about me, and I'd love to get to know you too. And yeah, I hope you sign up for the training. Bye.